But meanwhile, you know, Barney Frank wants the banks to lend for what reason? They've bailed out the banks, but the banks don't have any reason to lend, and they're not going to lend, and so we're not going to get out of this credit slump. I don't think housing is bottomed. I don't think housing bottoms until 2012, and this is a mess.
Scary thing about this housing market right now is that all of the first wave of these defaults have passed, but we still have 2 more phases to go, and those are the Alt-A mortgages and even more scary option ARMs, and those are the ones that were made later on as the housing bubble was continually inflated. And right now, we're looking at about $3 billion left and $25 billion coming in adjustable rate mortgages with defaults, and the time period on those is going to be sometime in mid-2010 to mid-2012. So we're in this lull here with mortgage foreclosures and defaults, and the worst is yet to come. It's estimated about 60% mortgage defaults are still coming starting in mid-2010.
Well, and I guess I'd like to add, like the Alt-A is roughly 4 times the size of the subprime, and it's already defaulting at rates of the subprime right now. But more worrisome in today's market is that it's going up even further in the food chain to the prime borrowers, and then those default rates are starting to tick up.
Way to back.
Wait till the commercial stuff unwinds. We're here. Oh my God! Yes. So, can I ask for some opinions about gold and silver and what drives gold and silver prices in comparison? Why one's so off from the other now? And then also gold in reference to the Dow, because gold was almost 1,850 and the Dow was 850 when I first was conscious of it, and now we got gold at 1,000 and the Dow at 7,000.
To me, silver is an industrial commodity. To me, gold is money. Gold has historically always been money. Silver less so, but certainly to a degree. So what we're seeing here is we're in deflation now. To me, it's absolutely critical to understand that. We've been there. Most people denied it for a long time. I think it's inevitable now that people realize exactly what's happening. But gold figures, as far as I'm concerned, to strengthen in that. Silver being primarily an industrial commodity that's used up. The industrial commodities got smashed. Oil got smashed. Silver got smashed. All kinds of commodities across the board got smashed. The only thing that didn't get smashed was gold. Jay, you probably got some thoughts on this.
Wait, I have a question. You know, Mish said talks about deflation, and I want everybody here. Clyde has got one of his insights is everything you own is going to go down, and everything that you use is going to go up. And other than oil and your gas bill, is anybody's cost of living going down here?
Nope, no way.
Okay, is there real deflation in the things that you need to eat, than things that you use in your everyday life?
No.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, the only thing going down is things that have been bid up by too much credit. But there is inflation out there.
No, but you have to realize that the inflation that we've had over the last, let's say since the 80s, since the 70s, we had the inflationary bout, and that was in the CPI. I would argue that we had a hell of a lot of inflation during the last 20 years in the financial markets. And what we're seeing is the air come out of that part of the economy, and if it continues to go, ultimately we get deflation in the CPI too. We're seeing, if you want to talk about gold, in a deflationary environment, I think Mitch is right that we see gold performing best during deflation. Just take a look at what happened post-Lehman Brothers. Before that happened last September, since that happened, at one point at least, I haven't looked at it recently, but gold would buy 3 times more oil than it would have bought in September. It would buy twice as much copper, we buy twice as much of the Rogers raw material fund. I wished I could talk to Jimmy Rogers these days, because he used to just hound me about, Jay, he'd laugh at me, he said, zinc's going to outperform gold, there's no question about that. Well, it hasn't happened recently. So I think you have to be careful. If they don't get control of this, and I'm with Mitch on this, I don't think that any amount of money and the policies that are being carried out now by the policymakers, essentially to bail out the banks and not get money into the hands of the masses, I don't think they're going to be able to stop this these deflationary forces, and ultimately it does get to the CPI. Look, you got to
The question is, does anybody pay less for what they use?
The question is, Ty, does it matter?
Ty,
Does it matter?
What you don't realize, Ty, is the resources have been reallocated away from the people that work hard and produce wealth to the, as Clyde calls them, parasites in the banking industry and in government.
But is that
so,
inflationary or
That's
deflationary?
deflationary because your purchasing power has gone down.
This debate only makes sense.
That's correct. You get a dime for your dollar with the government.
But
This debate only makes sense if one can agree on what the definition of inflation and deflation are. If one wants to have, and I consider this an invalid position, that inflation is about prices, well then Ty is right. Unfortunately, I don't think that's a proper definition in Austrian economic terms. To me, inflation is an increase in money supply and credit, and deflation is a contraction in money supply and credit. And when one has to look at credit, one has to look at credit in terms of how it's being marked to market. And certainly, if we look at credit marked to market, we can see that we have an absolute implosion in credit marked to market. And if we take a look at what happened in the 1920s, excuse me, in the 1930s, thanks Jay, in the Great Depression, we're seeing the exact same conditions right now. Credit is contracting at a mark-to-market at a phenomenal rate. The Fed has been pumping money like mad trying to counteract that. They failed. We're seeing Treasury yields, although they've risen recently, Treasury yields have collapsed. Commercial credit yields junk bond yields have risen. The stock market has plunged. Housing prices have collapsed. I did a post called Humpty Dumpty on inflation. There's like 16 conditions that match exactly what was happening during the Great Depression. Those things are happening again now, including the Fed pumping money at a huge, phenomenal rate during the Great Depression. We're seeing the same thing happen now, the same things, the same conditions. If one wants to say that we're in inflation now, then one would have to say we were in inflation during the Great Depression. I'm sorry, I don't buy it.
I would like to add one other thing with respect to the parallels with the 30s, at least so far. Whether it continues remains to be seen, but certainly this kind of environment is best for gold mining. Why? Because the cost of producing goes down relative to the product that's being sold. And again, I'll go back to this collapse in the oil price. The 3 times an ounce of gold will buy 3 times more oil, twice as much copper. It also buys a lot more labor now in many mining situations. So the cost of producing gold, at least in Q4 of 2008, Goldcorp and some other companies talked about their reduction in cost. So I think this could be the sweet spot for gold mining. Not so much for silver for the reasons that Mitch mentioned, although silver has performed relatively well compared to say, copper and some of the others as well, because it does have a monetary component to it.